This is what I call some insane analysis. Check this out and I'll be right back.
We still have 3.6 million births a year, but the problem is teens and young adults. From ages 15 to 19, the fertility rate is down 7%, and it's down 70% over the last 2 decades, meaning we're telling people that are young not to have babies, to wait till they're in a more stable life situation, till they're more financially secure.
So what you just saw was an excerpt of an interview from Fox News where the commentator is talking about declining birth rates in the US. And the key thing to pay attention to in that conversation is the fact that he is lamenting the decline of birth rates of quote unquote young women from the ages of 15 and up. Now, why is that interesting? It's interesting on a number of different levels. But for context, I think it's important for us to understand that this is the argument that's coming from a group of people who are so disinterested in what's going on with a particular set of files and bringing justice to the victims of those in the files. And that's instructive because it tells us what these people are about. There's a reason why GOP stands for Group of Predators, because this is exactly what this party is committed to going forward. They are framing 15, 16, 17-year-old girls as women, and they're lamenting the fact that 15, 16, 17-year-old girls aren't having more babies. And when you think about that, and put it into context with the laws that they're trying to push forward, it really paints an interesting picture. And the reason why it paints an interesting picture is that this party has repeatedly gone on the record to try to implement laws that reduce the age of consent for marriage. This party has repeatedly loosened requirements for marriage up to and including marriage of first cousins. This party is the party that regularly votes against anything having to do with bodily autonomy, even in the cases of rape and incest. So what does that tell you about the priorities of this party? This is a party that is committed to continuing the cycle of poverty by any means necessary. There's tons of research that points out that if you delay parenthood, that actually has better economic outcomes for not only yourself, but also any children you decide to have. And yet, what are these Republicans advocating for? They're advocating for people to have children at much earlier ages, before you can even afford having kids and raising a family. What's even more intriguing about this particular party and what they stand for, they're committed to this idea that whites are being replaced at alarming rates. And they're concerned about birth rates, and they're entirely driven by the idea that whites as an ethnicity are going to be replaced by non-white populations. And in order to offset that, they're advocating for people to have children much earlier in their lives. And while it would be one thing to advocate for that, but this is also the same party that puts everything in place that makes it nearly impossible for people to not only have families, but have families and live a lifestyle that is remotely comfortable. Let's keep this in mind. The same group of people that are telling you to have kids are the ones that are voting against funding universal childcare, are voting against funding universal healthcare, are voting against funding schools and pre-K. And they're also voting for policies that are decidedly pro-business and anti-worker. These people are doing whatever they can to have you reproduce and then spend the rest of your life in survival mode. That's what this party is about. And when you put everything into context, they're normalizing the idea that 15, 16, 17-year-old girls should be having babies. And if that's the goalpost that they're at right now, how much longer do you think they'll wait before they start looking at 9, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds? Because, as we know, the demographic that largely votes Republican, and we know what they are also the ones that are most likely to commit crimes against women and against children, and particularly sex crimes against women and children. What does that tell you? It's instructive that the same people that are trying to pass these laws are also the ones that are supported by people that have a vested interest in these sorts of abusive behaviors and abusive relationships in their private lives. There's a reason why when you look at the instances of crimes against children, and particularly those of a sexual nature, the most common instances of those crimes occur in the home. And if they're not at home, they are perpetrated by people that the child knows. Think their teachers, their pastors, and so on. And while we're on the topic of pastors, keep in mind that the GOP has consistently supported various churches' rights to handle these abuse cases internally. They don't want to have law enforcement get involved. Certainly paints a picture, doesn't it? So when you hear conservative commenters lamenting about the low birth rates and framing 15, 16, 17-year-olds as women when they are in fact children, understand the signal that they're sending everybody. These people and this party wants to normalize old white men's ability to marry children. That is their goal. And their goal is to perpetuate the cycle of poverty that sort of behavior will encourage. And it's just another way for these people to engineer their version of utopia, a future where women are barely property and they can be disposed of as they see fit.